IPOB press release the 26th of January 2023.
The 2022 IEP Terrorism Index report is nothing but a hatchet job. A concoction of lies and blackmail against the indigenous people of Biafra. IPOB. The global family of the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB, led by our able leader Mazi Nnamdi Okwuchukwu Kanu, while repudiating in its entirety the lies and shameless blackmail contained in the 2022 IEP report, condemn in the strongest term possible this brazen attempt by the IEP to do a hatchet job for the Nigerian government by making itself readily available and willing to be used by the Fulani government of Nigeria as one of its international propaganda agency in an attempt to present IPOB, a non-violent self-determination movement, as being violent. It is very unfortunate, to say the least, that a global organization such as Institute for Economics and Peace IEP, a USA-based institute that have been providing measurable global terrorism index, will throw its reputation in the mud, descend so low as to publish concocted malicious and fallacious reports in an attempt to serve the interest of the Fulani in Nigeria, thereby exonerating Nigeria, a well-known state sponsor of terrorism, while blackmailing a non-violent self-determination group, IPOB, for a fee. The Institute for Economics and Peace must know that it has damaged its reputation beyond imagination with their inaccurate reports filled with hate, falsehood, blackmail, and propaganda against IPOB. It may not be very obvious to them now, but because the Institute made itself a willing tool in the hands of the enemies of Biafra and the Biafran people, this institution shall gradually lose relevance until another more objective and reputable institute shall take their place, because they have sold their conscience for pecuniary gain. How can any sane person or institute mention the name of the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB while writing about terrorism? The IEP should have asked the Tony Blair Institute what became of it after turning itself into a propaganda tool for the same Nigerian government. The indigenous people of Biafra, led by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, is not and has never been under any illusion that our desire for liberty and freedom will easily and readily find acceptance and understanding amongst certain Western nations, because to them black people have no right to self-determination. In this recently published IEP's Terrorism Index report of 2022, the current Nigerian government was cleverly portrayed as having improved its propaganda and blackmail against IPOB by claiming to have a working counter-terrorism action plan in place, but the reality on the ground depicts an entirely different picture. Backways, the terrorists have become more emboldened, more daring, and more bloodthirsty under this Buhari government. According to the report, the total number of dead victims as a result of terrorism in Nigeria for 2021 amounted to 448 dead, which was the lowest level it had been since 2011. This is another concocted lie. In one state alone, such as Benue State and Uzuwani in Enugu State, the Fulani-sponsored terrorists supported by the Nigerian government have killed more than 400 civilians. Ask yourself for a moment why the IEP and the Tony Blair Institute should present such shameless and barefaced falsehood. The answer lies in their interest in the zoo upcoming selection process, by which they hope to maintain the status quo, which will guarantee the continuous exploitation of the resources of the disparate indigenous nations forced into the contraption called the Zoological Republic of Nigeria. That is why these Western agencies, funded by their respective governments, can manipulate facts on the ground, manipulate the truth, and change the narrative to accord with their premeditated evil agenda and objective. The indigenous people of Biafra, led by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, has stated for the umpteenth time that we have neither interest nor business with the Nigerian Yomburi selection process. The Biafran people cannot be intimidated into participating in a shame process before our self-determination struggle will gain legitimacy in the eyes of the pro-Nigeria Western governments, institutions and organizations. Instead of stating the facts and standing for the truth, the once reputable IEP has decided to hypocritically report fake information and propaganda for the Nigerian government in order to deceive the gullible minds in the international community. That IPOB, an unarmed, non-violent freedom movement, is now the third group responsible for the death of persons in Nigeria. We challenge IEP to present irrefutable evidence where IPOB killed any person in Nigeria. The bias and fallacies contained in the IEP 2022 report is so surreal and mind-boggling in this age where informations are at our fingertips by simply browsing the internet. The truth and fact of the matter is that incontrovertible evidence abound, depicting and recording massacres and extrajudicial executions of many IPOB members by Nigeria security agencies since 2016 and 2017. IPOB lawyers, Amnesty International in Nigeria, International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law Inter-Society Nigeria, many diplomatic missions in Nigeria, including even the Nigeria media, have evidences of mass killing of unarmed IPOB members by the Nigeria government, using all its security apparatus for these crimes against humanity. If we may ask the IEP, what have we the Biafran people done wrong other than demand for an internationally supervised referendum to allow all oppressed indigenous nations in Nigeria the opportunity to decide their fate? We are not declared the use of force as a methodology to achieve this demand and our ultimate goal of a free, independent and sovereign Biafran nation. So why all these propaganda to blackmail IPOB in the world? Irrespective of all the illegal arrests, detentions, torture, extrajudicial killings, including extraordinary rendition of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya to Nigeria. The British and US have never said anything, rather they are in league and collaborating with Nigeria, an internationally acclaimed state sponsor of terrorism, disrespecter of rule of law, and violent violator of all known fundamental human rights, to fight against IPOB. IPOB has remained peaceful in the face of all these high levels of provocation. IPOB has a proven track record as a non-violent freedom fighting movement, with officers and family members legally operating in over 120 nations of the world, including the USA and almost all the countries of Europe. In all these nations, IPOB has been peaceful, working within the confines of the laws of our host country, law-abiding with no trace of violence. For IEP to tag IPOB is the third group that has caused the death of people in Nigeria. It is highly provocative and libelous and indicates that this group is compromised. It is very unfortunate that the USA government, through her agencies, have shown that they are working together with the Nigeria government to blackmail and persecute IPOB members for seeking a UN-recognized self-determination through referendum. If we are doing illegal agitation, the IEP should come out and tell the world what we have done wrong, instead of them to hide and plan world blackmail against a non-violent movement fighting for their people's freedom. The world is watching them, and they cannot escape what is coming to them. It's on record that USA Department of State has removed Nigeria as a country of particular concern on violation of religious freedom from their 2022, and later returned irrespective of many recorded cases of Christian massacres and invasion of Christian worship centers by Islamic extremists, sponsored by the state, because if the government has no hand in the insecurities, they would have found ways to stop the massacre that occurred in Owo Catholic Church, full-on lynching of Lady Deborah, the young lady from Sokoto State, and the recent burning to death of Rev. Fr. Aki of a Catholic church in Niger State, to mention but a few examples. The inability of the Institute for Economics and Peace to even mention the Fulani terrorist herdsmen, which is the fourth most deadly terror group in the world in their report, is a clear indication of who contracted IEP to tarnish the image of the indigenous people of Biafra. It confirms the intel at our disposal that sinister collaboration is going on between Nigeria, the USA, and the British governments to blackmail and discredit IPOB in the eyes of the international community, which is the only credible and unwavering mouthpiece of the oppressed nations in Nigeria, in order to continue in the implementation of the Abuja Declaration, which essentially seeks to levy a jihad against Nigerian Christians, exterminate them, take over the ancestral lands of the indigenous people, import foreign Fulani terrorist herdsmen from all over Africa, and establish an Islamic Republic. Notwithstanding very copious documented evidence of Fulani herdsmen's massacres across Nigeria, including the most recent slaughter of more than 100 people in Eha community in Biafra land by Fulani terrorists, called herdsmen, the IEP did not think it worthy of mention because 1. The victims are Biafrans and 2. Mentioning it will defeat the purpose of the blackmail and propaganda against IPOB. The IEP should contact some reputable organizations based in Nigeria, such as Amnesty International, and particularly the homegrown civil society organizations, such as International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law Intersociety Onisha, Nigeria, to get the true facts and stop being the purveyor of falsehood and propaganda for the Nigerian government. We are aware that US government has so much interest in Nigeria and the oil and gas from Biafra land, and wouldn't mind giving tacit support to a terrorist government to wipe out Biafrans and to destabilize Biafra region. They have done it in the past against revolutionary African leaders and are still doing it as I write. It's obvious that they are not hiding their interest and bias against Biafrans. They should bear in mind that we are no longer in 1967, when the media were used to demonize Biafrans by branding our people aggressors instead of victims. We are here to tell our own stories to the world with facts and figures. We advise the USA government to stand as a global human rights defenders to defend the right of every world citizen and not join the oppressors to abuse the rights and privileges of ordinary citizens. IPOB remains peaceful and determined in the pursuit of Biafra liberation through UN-supervised referendum. We are not going to be distracted by sponsored blackmail and propaganda, not now and not tomorrow. The coming of the free, independent and sovereign Biafran nation is a miracle in the making. Therefore, neither the alliances of those that hate us for being Biafrans and do not wish us to exist as a people, nor all the forces of darkness shall be able to stop what Chukwu Kikabaya has decreed shall be. Comrade Emma Powerful, Media and Publicity Secretary for IPOB.